Welcome back. I'm so excited to continue this unit on the Birchbark House, our guidebook unit 1. We're now on lesson 3. And as a recap, we have analyzed digital and print sources to integrate information about what life was like during the Ice Age. Great video clip we got to watch on the movie The Ice Age. Remember, maybe you can watch that one rainy day and finish the whole movie to see what happens to the baby. Also, we were able to read the nonfiction passage by Charles Mann and find out some information about how people came to the Americas. Was it by walking? Was it by a boat? Was it an ark? We're going to dig a little bit more today and find that out. Today, we're going to look at a nonfiction book, The First Americans by Joy Haycom. We're going to determine the reason why people moved to the New World. So many of you may not actually have a copy of The First Americans, so I'm going to be reading that to you today. And if you have a student resource book, depending on when you watch this video, this might actually be in your student resource book and you could follow along with me. You may also have your reading log, which is the information you've been putting in notes, and your vocabulary chart where we've added different words through each lesson. As I read, look for this information here. Chapter 3, in the beginning. Watch that band of people move across the plain. They look hungry and tired. The tribe is small, just 20 people in all, and only 6 men are of hunting age. But they are brave and their spears are sharp, so they will keep going. They follow the tracks of a mammoth. If they can kill the mammoth, a huge woolly elephant, they will feast for much of the winter. The trail of the great animal leads them into a wide grassy earth bridge that stretches between 2 continents. They have come from Asia. When they cross that bridge, they will be on land that someday will be called America. The trail of the mammoth leads them from Asia to a new world. They don't know what a big step they are taking. They don't know they are making history. All they know is that they have lost the mammoth. He has outsmarted them. But it doesn't matter. The new land is rich in animals and fish and berries. They will stay. Our question is, what does the author mean by they don't know what a big step they are taking? They don't know they are making history. Well, they don't realize that people are not literally taking big steps. The author is just saying that they are taking big steps because they are arriving in a new world, even though they don't know it. The people are making history because they are the first to travel to this new world. As you listen as I read this, even though this is an informative passage, it's written somewhat like a narrative. It kind of tells a story. It tells the story of how these people were actually moving. Picture in your mind what they looked like. Maybe they were like the ones in our video clip. Imagine them doing that as I continue to read. All of that happened a long time ago. Families still lived in huts and caves, and the bow and arrow hadn't even been invented. It was a time when ice blankets, called glaciers, covered much of the northern land. We call it the Ice Age. Some of the glaciers were more than a mile high. Nothing humans have built has been as tall. If you look at a map of the world today, you will find the Bering Sea between Asia and Alaska. The distance is short, just 18 miles, but the sea is icy and treacherous. Now this is strange but true. In the Ice Age, that region had a mild climate, and that 18 miles, which is now sea, was land. It was an earth bridge 1,000 miles wide with open grassland, clear lakes for fishing, and even some forest regions. Much of the earth's water was then frozen in glaciers, so there was more land and less ocean everywhere. Long gone land between the continents is known as Beringia. It was a good place to live. Big animals came to Beringia. People came too. Some of the people walked there. Some came by sea. There was a lot to eat. For everyday dining, the hunters and the fisher folk lived on small game and small fish, but they had the skills to kill mammoths and whales, and when they could, they did. The mammoths and giant sloths and camels were plant eaters and only moderately dangerous. It was the meat eating animals, the saber toothed cats that named lions and the huge bears, who must have licked their lips after munching on humans. That was the way of the hunting world. Journeying by sea may have been safer than by land, and these people were very good sailors. In boats covered with animal skins, they could explore and settle the coastline. Gradually, we think that land rovers and the seagoers took a big step onto the new continent. Alaska, where the hunters went, seemed like a fine place. There were seals, bison with big curved horns, birds called ptarmigans, and other good things to hunt and eat. Glaciers covered large parts of North America, but much of Alaska and Siberia was free of ice. More hunters came with their families. At first, there was plenty of food, but after a few years, maybe it was a few thousand years, the land seemed crowded. There was no longer enough game for everyone to hunt. Each year, when the hunters saw birds fly south, they wished they could fly over the mountains of ice. They watched the animals and found there were ways around and through the thick glaciers. Some of them followed the herds east into Canada until they reached some Great Lakes. Then they took those waterways south onto the vast plains of North America. Others may have followed a narrow beachside path with high glaciers on one side and the ocean on the other. It was worth the trip. They found grasses and nuts and berries to eat. They found a hunter's wonderland. There were antelope, musk, ox, bighorn sheep, lions, deer, moose, fox, otter, beaver, saber-toothed tigers, and bison. Some of the animals had come from Asia too, by walking over the earth bridge or by swimming in the sea. In America, animals had grown big, bigger than any animals you've ever seen. Some beavers were as large as bears, and birds, great vulture-like pterosaurs, had wings that reached 15 feet from tip to tip. Lions were huge. Moose antlers measured 8 feet across. North America was a hunter's heaven, and big game hunters had arrived. Someday those hunters will be known as Clovis people, because in the 20th century their spear tips will be discovered along with the mammoth bones at Clovis, New Mexico. Spear points with bison bones found near Folsom, New Mexico, will indicate that some early Americans hunted animals like bison that traveled in herds. These versatile hunters, who also kill and eat birds, fish, foxes, and turtles, will thrive in North America. Those Clovis people weren't the first Americans. No one is sure who arrived first. Some very old artifacts, about 22,000 years old, have been discovered in Virginia. Their discovery startled archaeologists who thought the earliest humans arrived on the west coast. Virginia is on the east coast. So where did all those first families of Virginia come from? We don't know yet, but scientific sleuths are trying to answer that question. We now believe that some early Americans came over the eastern Canadian ice sheets. Others may have sailed directly across the Atlantic, possibly from the Mediterranean world. On the west coast, some Pacific Islanders may have used the ocean as a direct highway. We know that ancient humans explored South America down to its tip. One thing is for sure, those who came arrived in waves over centuries, bringing different backgrounds, different skills, and different languages. The American continents were a good place to live, especially as the climate was changing. It was getting warmer, slowly. Up north, the big glaciers, which were like seas of frozen water, melted and froze and melted and froze. When they melted, the oceans got bigger and flooded some of the land. The earth bridge disappeared under the sea. Then, when the water froze again, the earth bridge reappeared. The pathway through the glacier closed up, then reopened. Finally, about 10,000 years ago, things settled down much as they are now. Water covered Thuringia. It got very cold in the Bering Sea. When all that happened, the animals and people who had come across to the new land were stuck. They couldn't go back to Asia, and no one could join them. America was cut off from the rest of the world. As we discuss this, I want you to look at this map on page 15. Think about the journey that people took to reach the new continent. Let's analyze this map. Notice how they can walk across the land because there is that land bridge, Beringia. The ice that's frozen into glaciers there, where it gives them that space to travel from Africa and Asia over to the Americas. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes they could also go by boat in the water. The sea was not as bad then. We see some of that here. And they were able to end up in the Americas. The land bridge linked Alaska to Siberia. It's known as Beringia. The people were following the animals. The people use animals for food, clothing, and weapons. The animals might have moved across the land bridge looking for warmer weather or food. Let's add Beringia to our word wall. Are you seeing some things we saw in our video from Ice Age? It's making sense. Now, let's discuss the challenges that people faced as they moved from Asia to Alaska. Well, the climate was mild with grasslands and frozen lakes. However, there were only man-made spears. People did not even have bow and arrows yet. Remember the video? You saw the hunters with the spears? Meat-eating animals, such as saber-toothed cats, maned lion, and huge bears, roam the earth. We saw even in the video the saber-toothed tigers. As more and more people came to the New World, overcrowding became a problem. People traveled from place to place looking for food and having to build a shelter. Definitely challenges. Well, what evidence does our author, Joy Hacom, provide to support the idea that the American continents were a good place to live? Even though they faced many challenges, it was worth it because look at all of these things that make it a great place to live. Joy Hacom says that was a good place to live because there was land and space, abundance of animals to hunt for food. The climate was changing and it was beginning to warm up. The Ice Age ended when the climate warmed. It would be more difficult for people to come to the Americas without the land bridge because they would have to cross the oceans. We see that it is a great place because of the many things that are there with animals and the warm climate. And remember, we've been working with TWR. So again, here's a little activity that we can work with where, remember, the sentence is the building block of writing. And so we want to make these fragments into complete sentences. Remember to add capitalization and punctuation. Here we have a few that we'll go over. I'll do together with you and then you can do some more. The land bridge called Beringia. Okay, we've added that word. Well, it linked North America to Asia. So let's tell us what it did. When you write complete sentences, remember to capitalize the first word of the sentence, capitalize proper nouns, and have in punctuation. Sometimes it's hard to see it. You might even need to make it a little more obvious, right? Beringia, North America, and Asia are proper nouns. Well then, the animals. We talk about a lot of animals. What about the animals? Well, the animals moved across the land bridge looking for warmer weather as well. Now, if you were to continue answering these on your own, what became a problem? We have to ask ourselves because we see that's a fragment. Well, as more and more people came to the New World, overcrowding became a problem. Was beginning to warm up. What was beginning to warm up? We saw the climate was beginning to warm up. Who or what traveled to the New World? Well, people traveled to the New World, and we can expand it even more to say looking for food and warmer weather. So throughout this lesson, we've learned why the first Americans came to the New World. And you also identified evidence to support points that Haycom makes in the text. Throughout chapter 3 of this nonfiction text, we see they came looking for a warmer climate and for land and for animals and food to have. Definitely something I would enjoy. Hope you've enjoyed this chapter. Join us again for lesson 4 when we look at another chapter of Joy Haycom's book.